Tesla shares under a little bit of pressure today as Elon Musk's recent stock sale and his focus on Twitter weighing on the stock. Joining us now to discuss is Wedbush Securities Senior Analyst for Equities, Dan Ives. Dan, always great to see you here. Just got to ask you about these stock sales. Anything hinky going on here? Because my understanding is if you have a corporate executive who's laid out a plan for selling a stock and it's supposed to be arm's length, the timing should not be theoretically suspect as it is in this case. Maybe you can clue us in on some of the details here.
Look, I mean, the biggest problem is, Musk is essentially using Tesla as his own ATM machine. And, obviously with the Twitter circus show that continues to, I'd say, get worse, not better, the red ink at Twitter means he's ultimately going to have to sell more stock. And it becomes just, a cascading spiderweb situation that's just cast a massive shadow on Tesla because of the antics we're seeing with Twitter and Musk. Where, I mean, this is almost a Twilight Zone episode that never ends.
What has been the impact of his losing his focus? Down 30% shares just since he took over Twitter, down 62% year to date, down 14% this week. What has been the impact of the Twitter distraction?
I mean, look, Musk, it's been a magic carpet ride the last I'd say 3.5, 4 years. I mean, they really at the top, not just of the EV race, but even from a brand perspective, from a Wall Street view, I think changed dramatically. Now he's essentially gone from a superhero to a villain in the eyes of many investors, because of what we see on Twitter and the impact that that's had on Tesla. Feels like attention continues to be focused on Twitter. And the biggest problem, selling Tesla shares to fund Twitter. And even, what we've seen over the last week, it's brand deterioration, a black eye for Musk, which is a black eye for Tesla. And that's part of the problem here. It was always our biggest fear once he bought Twitter.
Well, Dan, is there anything that Elon can do to quell some of these, maybe get ahead of some of the controversy? Not that he's been historically known for doing exactly that, but it just seems to me like if you were to change his 12B1 plan, I believe that's what it's called, or just acted, I just maybe gave investors a heads up. That's another potential solution here. Anything Elon could do to kind of mitigate some of these claims against him?
Yeah, I mean, look, you hit the nail on the head. I think first off, needs like a lot of CEOs, a defined selling plan in terms of what he's going to sell, per quarter. And I think investors need to know that. So there's no surprise because right now it's a guessing game and that actually becomes just fuel for the shorts because you continue to worry about it. And it's been the boy that cried wolf saying that he's done selling, but yet continues to sell. Two, you need a CEO of Twitter that's not Musk. I mean, this is what I'd say is an untenable situation in terms of him being CEO of Twitter and Tesla. And it comes down to, 44 billion, again, it's going to go down in our opinion, is probably the most overpaid tech acquisition in the history of deal making, but it's the impact that it's having on Tesla. So I think you need separation there. And then look, in terms of just for Musk, it's attention. You need more and more to focus on Tesla and not just sitting there on Twitter, because I think that's been a bad look. And I think it's reflected in the stock.
And you still have an outperforming a $250 price target on Tesla. Why?
I mean, look, it's the fundamental view. I mean, I believe it's one of the most transformational companies over the next 5-6 years, along with Apple. And that's why it's a fundamental bullish view. But no doubt, I mean, I think the clock struck 12 in terms of patience wearing thin. And I think that's what you start to see with a capitulation in Tesla in a risk-off market. And I think it's just really been, I think for investors, it's really a Ted Stryker airplane moment in terms of the view of Musk now.
Striker. I'm looking at a chart of Apple here, and it looks like I got 4 pretty big red candles in a row here. Something that's a little bit unusual for a stock, as Dave was remarking earlier, when there's really not a lot of news out. And it looks like, at least on a technical level, bumping down against that 130 potential support area. Looks like things are getting dicey potentially for Apple. Just wondering how you're viewing this as a securities analyst that you cover.
Well, I mean, obviously, look, technicals are dictating some of that now, but everyone knows, and we've talked about a lot. I mean, given the supply chain issues in China with the lockdown, they're probably going to come up, potentially on the high end, 10 million units short, on the low end called 7 million. It's not a demand issue, it's a supply issue. I mean, demand still outweighs supply, I think 3 to 1, which is bullish. But I just think right now in a tech risk-off market, Apple's going to have a bullseye on their back, especially given what we see with the COVID lockdowns. But we don't view this as the time to panic. I view this as just a way oversold Rock of Gibraltar name that I think is massively higher over the next year. That's why we have a $200 price target.
And stepping back to Elon Musk and stepping out of your analyst role for just a minute, I mean, are you concerned about the human being that is Elon Musk that seems to be in these minute-to-minute overreactions, Twitter memes, banning journalists?
Look, it's a concern because I think from the beginning, this was always the worry that if he actually owned Twitter, things like we saw last night, today could ultimately happen. And it goes back to that whole freedom of speech, which actually has turned out, you could argue maybe it'd be the opposite in terms of what we're seeing. And it's about the brand of Musk. Brand of Musk is associated with the brand of Tesla. And look, this is someone that obviously with SpaceX and Tesla, you can never argue with what they've done, historical success. But the double-edged side of Musk, the negative side, is what we see playing out today. And this is no different really than a 5-year-old, getting into an argument, in the playground. But unfortunately, it's on a global platform, and that's the problem.
And you have a buy rating on Penn State in the Rose Bowl?
Oh, yeah, Pasadena bound. I think Penn State by a touchdown over Utah.
Underdogs against the Utes. Dan Ives.
Underdogs.
Good to see you, sir. Enjoy the weekend.
Thanks.